Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. George Orwell wrote, "Every generation imagines itself to be more intelligent than the one that went before it and wiser than the one that comes after it." Somebody from Boulder posted this on one of my recent videos. People made the claim to me that the reason larger fires of the past can be discounted is because of the way we can fight fires today, with large fire crews and air tankers dropping water on the fires. I hear this argument all the time as well. People say, fires burn much hotter now due to climate change, and we could have put out those big fires in the past with modern technology. Once again, this is a case of urban dwellers imagining that humans control things much more powerful than they are. First, let's look at what actually happened at the Marshall Fire in Colorado last week. The fire started in this shed with very high winds blowing from the west.
And the wind is so strong. That's somebody's barn.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. What to do? Oh, shoot. That's me.
Somebody posted that video on Twitter. It's pretty clear the fire didn't start naturally. Sheds don't just spontaneously combust. High winds carried the fire over the hill into Louisville and burned up every single house on Mulberry Street. Mulberry Street, like many other neighborhoods in Louisville, has very large houses on very small lots. There was huge amounts of fuel in a very small area. This place was a bonfire waiting to happen. With those high winds blowing, there was nothing the firefighters could do. Aircraft can't fly in that type of wind, and the fire front was moving almost as fast as the wind was. Humans are completely powerless to stop a fire like that. And yet, Dr. Lauren Gifford, who describes herself as a climate change social scientist living in Louisville, Colorado, says the fire was caused by climate change. I sent her a message asking her to explain, but I haven't heard back. And another doctor weighed in. Dr. Katie Dickinson also describes herself as a climate change social scientist in Louisville. I never heard of a climate change social scientist before yesterday, and now we know that there's two of them living in Louisville, Colorado. Let's look at some historical forest fires which climate alarmists now imagine we could have put out with modern technology. The Miramichi Fire in New Brunswick in 1825 burned an area 80 miles long and 25 miles wide in 9 hours. There were extremely high winds which aircraft couldn't have flown in, and all that people could do would be try to escape with their lives. A similar situation occurred in Victoria on February 6, 1851, commonly known as Black Thursday. Temperatures in Melbourne were 117 degrees Fahrenheit in the shade at 8 o'clock in the morning. The intense heat of Black Thursday was accompanied by a hot wind almost of the strength of a hurricane. Most of the state of Victoria burned up in just a few hours. Similar fires burned around the Great Lakes during the first week of 1871. Chicago burned to the ground, and this area around Green Bay, Wisconsin burned in just a few hours. Thousands of people lost their lives, and they had no chance of escaping the inferno. Earlier in the week, much of Minnesota burned up in very high winds. The New York Times said the fire burned with lightning rapidity. One of the most incredible fires occurred just after Valentine's Day in South Carolina during 1898. Almost 3 million acres burned up in one day, and that was during the winter. The largest fire in U.S. history burned in Montana and Idaho in 1910. More than 3 million acres burned up in an inferno in just a few hours. There were huge numbers of people trying to fight that fire, and many firefighters lost their lives. There were hurricane-force winds, the flames were hundreds of feet high, airplanes couldn't possibly have flown, and there was absolutely nothing humans could do to stop it. Another massive fire occurred in Victoria on Black Friday 1939. There was record heat, very high winds, and almost all of the forest land in Victoria burned up in one day. There were huge numbers of firefighters, but there was nothing they could do. They failed lamentably. Now let's look at some video I filmed 2 years ago of an actual firefighting operation at a very large fire in Wyoming. You can see that the firefighters aren't trying to stop the fire because that's impossible. All that they're trying to do is to save structures, people's homes. Humans are powerless against these fires, but we can defend ourselves against very bad neighborhood design. And we can also defend ourselves against snake oil saleswomen like Dr. Lauren Gifford. The Black Friday fires in Victoria occurred in 1939, and George Orwell said something very important that year as well. Almost certainly we're moving into an age of totalitarian dictatorships, an age in which freedom of thought will be at first a deadly sin and later on a meaningless abstraction. The autonomous individual is going to be stamped out of existence. The way that this is being done is the public is being bombarded with science fiction. A demonstration of this was done in 1938 when mass panic was generated by the radio broadcast of H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds. That was just a one-off event, however. Now the public is constantly being bombarded with science fiction designed to throw them into a panic from agencies like CNN and NPR. The current generation imagines that they're much smarter and more sophisticated now than the people of 1938. But reality is that the current climate emergency is no more credible than the Martian invasion and War of the Worlds from 1938. The human race is just as ignorant, superstitious, and vulnerable as it always was. Humans are powerless against the outdoor climate, but we're very fortunate to have fossil fuels which make our indoor climate livable. Toto hopes that some calm music can help people escape this brainwashing. You can visit him, Curie, and Caesar on the web at realclimatescience.com.